Hey there, NASCAR fans! Have you got your copy of the latest edition of NASCAR Pole Position Print Magazine? If not, there's no better time than now to subscribe at polepositionmag.com. NASCAR Pole Position is the only print magazine covering NASCAR. Officially licensed by NASCAR, NASCAR Pole Position Magazine is published throughout the NASCAR season, and each edition is an instant collector's item, packed with great feature stories and photography. The magazine is even mailed to you in a poly bag for those who love to collect NASCAR memorabilia. At polepositionmag.com, you can even find past issues available to purchase. Get your subscription to NASCAR Pole Position and get great NASCAR content delivered straight to your mailbox throughout the season. Learn more at polepositionmag.com. That's polepositionmag.com.
Hey y'all, Rick Houston here, and I want to tell you about my new show, the Moonshine and Motorsports Racing Podcast. I've partnered up with the state of North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources to help uncover the history behind moonshining mountain boys, professional wheelmen, and the backwoods and city lights of the Tar Heel State. In the first episode, I sat down with Winston Kelly at the NASCAR Hall of Fame for a little behind-the-scenes gossip about Junior Johnson's engineering skills.
He's got two things in his hand, pipe wrench and channel lock pliers, and they weren't new. They had been around the block a time or two.
Wasn't the first steel they built, I bet?
No. I think the pliers had been red before, but paint had worn off.
And in the second episode, I talked to a professional hillbilly, a.k.a. Dr. Daniel Pierce of UNC Asheville, to find out the real history of moonshiners and their battles with the revenuers.
He wrote about one of his experience of trying to chase down this bootlegger in this souped-up car, and he complained that the government gave him these piece of crap, cheapo cars, and that were really no match, but he thought he was doing pretty good, and then the guy just hits it and just takes off and practically disappear. But then the guy makes a bootleg turn and comes back towards him. And as he said, it was a game of chicken, and I was the chicken. And so he ran off the road. And actually, he was the guy who caught Junior Johnson at his daddy's steel when Junior got tangled up in a barbed wire fence.
So check out the Moonshine and Motorsports Racing Podcast, available on YouTube, dailydownforce.com, and all of your favorite podcasting platforms. And be sure to check out my regular show on NASCAR history, the Scene Vault Podcast. Hello, my name is Rick Houston, and welcome to another episode of the Moonshine and Motorsports Podcast. Now, let me see here. What's the best way to describe Buck Nance, the master distiller at the Copper Barrel Distillery in good old Wilkes County, North Carolina? Let's put it this way. He is as old school gets, and he knows his way around a still, both legal and otherwise. Well, first of all, where did you grow up? Did you grow up here in Wilkes County?
I grew up right here within 300 yards.
Did you really? So you've lived in this area basically your whole life?
Most of it. I moved to West Virginia one time and stayed up there for 14 and a half years.
Okay. All right.
And then I came back here in 93, which is, 31 years ago?
Yes, sir. Now, what was life like here when you were born as a child?
Life was tough. I mean, we farmed, and, Dad, he worked two jobs. There's 7 of us kids, and which I got an older brother and older sister. I'm third down. And which we farmed all these fields here, and we grew our own meat, cattle, hogs, whatever, chickens. And, Dad, he worked 2 jobs to feed us all and made a little moonshine on the side.
How did making liquor first enter the picture for you?
Helping my dad, I probably started when I was 9, 10 years old.
No kidding.
And
What were you doing at that age?
I would, in an outbuilding, we would load a bag of sugar on a wheelbarrow, and I'd roll it to distill and roll a can of liquor back. So Dad never would let me go all the way to the still. He'd keep me probably 100 yards away and meet me there. So
Now, why wouldn't he let you go to the still?
he didn't want me to get involved in it.
Okay. All right.
So,
How steep of a learning curve did you have in learning how to produce a good product? At what point did you start actually making product? When did you get to the still?
I probably started on my own at about 14, 15 years old.
Okay.
And, then later years, Dad, he became a preacher, and he told me all the time, or preached to me, why I shouldn't be doing it.
So your dad became a preacher, and he tried to get you to stay away from it.
Right. Yeah, he didn't want me to fooling with it, but it didn't do him no good. I did anyway.
The bug had already bit.
Right.
What were you doing full time? Were you making liquor full time, or did you have another job amongst regular folk?
Well, I worked various jobs, mostly in automotive.
Okay.
Either as mechanic or body work, fabricating and whatnot. I run a body shop for over 40 years.
Okay.
So
Here in Wilkes County?
Well, here in Wilkes County and Princeton, West Virginia, too. I run one up there for about 14 and a half years.
When'd you move up there?
I moved up there in 77.
Okay. All right.
And,
When did you first meet Junior Johnson?
Lord, I couldn't answer that and be honest, but when I was a young man,
Really?
the
So
first,
you knew him that long?
oh yeah,
Okay.
the first time I ever met him, a friend of mine took me down there and I bought parts from him to build a hot rod motor. That was probably in the mid-60s.
So he was already driving at that point?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. When did you go to work for his race team?
Well, probably somewhere in the early 70s.
Okay. What were you doing for him?
Fabricating.
Okay. And did you go, I think when we talked, you said that you didn't go on the road with him. You were mainly here in the shop.
Mainly, yeah,
Okay.
that was the deal. See, I worked with Roger Hamby when he started, and I did Roger's cars and Junior's cars at the same time. When from day to day, I didn't know which shop I was going to go to, with Roger's or Junior's. But most time, I worked at Junior's a lot at night when everybody else was gone.
Now, why was that?
Well, we did a lot of stuff to the car. Junior was a very secretive man, and he tried to keep everything in the shop.
Okay.
He didn't want nothing to go out.
Now, when you were working for Junior in the shop at night, I would assume if that was in the mid-70s, that Cale would have been driving?
Yeah, Kel was the driver when I was there.
Okay. How much did you get to know him?
Well, pretty well. He, Kel wasn't in the shop a whole lot.
Right.
Mostly what I talked to Kel was at the racetrack.
Okay.
I was always at the racetrack, but I went with Roger Hamby, but I ended up working with Junior's team more than I did Roger.
Yeah.
See, Junior and Roger, they had some type of deal. Junior furnished all of Roger's motors and gears and whatnot, and I don't know how they worked it out, but I always felt like he was trading me out to Junior for to pay his bills. And,
All right, so working for Junior Johnson and working for Roger Hamby basically at the same time, that was definitely a have and have not proposition. Roger didn't have a lot.
it was a 24/7 job. I mean, they kept me going day and night.
At Rogers
And Junior's.
and Juniors.
Because sometimes Kel would wreck 3 cars in one weekend. And Roger, he would have a wreck now and then. And he had a couple of drivers. He had one driver that wrecked every week.
Go ahead, name names.
That was Phil Parsons. When Phil drove for him, you had to depend on putting sheet metal on the car every week. He would wreck every week.
So you worked for him. How long did you work for them? If you started in the early 70s when Cale was at Juniors and you were still there when Phil was at Rogers, you had to have worked for him for at least 10, 12 years.
At least
All right.
from 70, probably 2 or 3, all the way through through 90,
Okay.
91, 92, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And I remember I just got fed up. Then Roger was born, and he was interested in getting in racing, so I just decided to quit them and head up his race team.
Your sons.
Yeah.
Okay.
So actually, he's kept me busy for the last 40 years.
How much sheet metal did you have to replace?
I've replaced a lot, and I've straightened a lot.
Now you said that you got fed up. Was it just becoming too big a business, or what kind of led you to walk away?
It got real political, and the officials would come to me. They got to where they would, and see. When I was in West Virginia, I fabricated some cars for Kenny Childress. They called him the coal miner.
Right. Yeah.
And, Harry Gant drove those cars. Buddy Baker drove.
Donnie Allison did a little bit.
Donnie Allison drove. And Buddy Baker sat on the pole at Daytona in one of Kenny's cars that I did. And him and Mike Porter sat on the pole the same year. That's what I was talking about, Sam Ard, and
Yeah.
he sat on the outside pole, Mike got the pole. But it just got to where I didn't know which way I wanted to go. So when we run Atlanta the last year in 89, there was an official come to me and told me that I need to work for one team. I need to quit jumping around. He said, "You're trying to be a suit car Jake," is what he told me. And he said, "It ain't going to work. We want you with one team and stay with them." And I went and told Roger and Junior, I said, "I'll never be back." That was 89, and I never went back to another NASCAR race.
No kidding.
And I've never been to one till today. So
Now, why did you enjoy going back and forth between the teams, as opposed to sticking with one?
really, both of them just turned me loose and let me do what I wanted to do to the car. I had to talk to them about it and explain to them what I was doing, but and I always wanted to run up front, and if I couldn't build a car that would run up front, I didn't want nothing to do with it. So,
Yeah. I do want to go back to you working at Junior's shop at night, basically in the dead of night. How creative were you getting with the car?
I was getting real creative. A lot of times Junior would tell me, he said, "Boy, that's far enough." And he always called me boy. And I remember I talked about he was very secretive. They
Now,
did
if Junior Johnson told you that's far enough, that must have been something.
I would go a little bit farther sometimes, but we never really got caught with anything that other. One time at Talladega, see, I did the Oldsmobiles when Junior went to Oldsmobile. And Cale was summoned to court by GM on a class action lawsuit over the Oldsmobile. And that was the year we went to the Oldsmobile down at Junior's. And he had to be in court the day that qualifying was at Talladega. So Junior got Harry Gant to qualify the car. Harry went out there and showed his butt. He was about 5 or 6 miles an hour faster than the second place man. And they were trying to figure out why the car was so much faster. And they took 2 more Oldsmobiles, and they put Juniors in the middle of them, and they set them about 100 foot away. And they backed up and looked at them. Well, it looked like you had a boxcar sitting on each side and an airplane in the middle. So it was very obvious when you put the cars together. So Junior called me. He said, "Buck," he said, "you get a front end for this car and get down here right now." He said, "Bring every piece of a front end." So I did. And but by the time I got there, he called me early that morning. The time I got there, they were all coming out, and I was trying to get in. And I met them coming out. But anyway, Junior had talked him into letting him widen the car out an inch in the front. So we didn't have to put the front end on. I just took Bondo and fiberglass and added an inch to each side of the header panel, and they let it go. But I'll tell you some of the other story about that deal. When I was trying to get in the racetrack and they had to shut down, they were trying to get out. I met Junior. Thomas Ham was driving. Junior was in the passenger seat, and Roger Hamby was sitting in the back seat. And Junior told Thomas, he said, "You and Buck switch drivers." I said, "Thomas, you take Buck's car," and I got over and drove them. We went downtown somewhere there, Talladega, I don't know where it was at, some restaurant. And we were sitting there eating. Junior, he asked me, he said, "Buck, how much did you narrow that front end?" I said, "Junior, how much did you tell me to narrow that front end?" He said, "Did I tell you to narrow that front end up that much?" I said, "Well, I don't know. I sort of done what you were you wanted or whatnot." And Roger Hamby started just dying laughing. He said, "You two SOBs." He said, y'all have spent all winter with that car. You both have lived with it every night. And he says, here it is. Neither one of you don't know a blame thing about it. It wasn't that nice of words, but he says, neither one of you don't know nothing about what went on with that car. And we never did talk about it.
Did you ever mess with nitrous?
Yeah. I'll tell you, deal on nitrous. I put a nitrous bottle in an oil tank and run the line through the oil line in to the intake and whatnot. It was pretty well hid. Nitrous bottles, I don't know what they are today. I've not messed with it in 30 years, but they had a lead plug. If the bottle got hot, that plug would melt and blow out. We went, this wasn't for Junior. This was, I tell you, it was for Sterling Marlin. And we went to Talladega to practice, test. And with the nitrous, the car would pick up 3-4 tenths. Just squirt it going down the straightaway.
This was when Sterling was driving for Junior?
No,
Or
this was
Roger?
after Sterling drove for Junior. Sterling was driving, I believe, the number 4 car at that time.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, we went out and tested 2 or 3 times and come back in at lunchtime, which NASCAR always shuts down at lunchtime, whether it's practice, race, or whatever. You go and take that hour for lunch. And we were sitting there, and that plug blew out of that nitrous bottle and blew the oil tank up. Oil went everywhere.
This was in testing.
No, it was in Alabama, in Talladega.
In testing?
Yeah, in testing,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
I thought you said Texas, though. But anyway, Bobby Allison, he come walking down through there. And he stopped right in front of the car and started just dying laughing. He said, boys, he said, what happened? Did your passing gear blow up? So
Yep, that's what it was.
he had already been there and done that. But nobody knew it. But we never did actually run the nitrous on the track. We never did build another one after that one blew up.
No.
I was scared to.
I also heard at one point that when Kel was there was something about lead in the wheels. That there was some kind of trough all the way around the rim or something?
I don't remember lead,
Okay.
but I do remember water. We would fill the tires full of water to get through inspection. And the first caution to come out, whether it was 1 lap or 2 laps or the first lap, we always come in and jerk those tires off that were full of water.
And weighed about 500 pounds.
I'd say you could probably put probably 50, 60 pounds of water in each tire. And you could jerk those 4 tires off and lose 200 pounds real quick.
They would have to be full of water.
Right.
Because if it sloshed around going around that racetrack, that would be...
Well, water, unless you're just hitting the gas or whatnot, water won't slosh. When you run, that water will spread itself out and equal itself out. And then when you stop or start or whatever, that's when the water would slosh.
Could you hear it?
I don't remember, probably. But the tires were completely full. I mean, they weren't no air in the tires.
While you were working in NASCAR, were you still messing with liquor?
Oh, yeah.
All right. when it comes to when it comes to making liquor, what's your specialty? What's your top of the line product, or what was your top of the line product?
I used a rye and corn blend.
Okay.
With steam injection is what I've always used, and which I've entered my moonshine in several competitions, and I've got several medals.
Yeah.
10 or 12. I've got some golds, silvers, whatnot.
It seems to me that to do what you've done, both in NASCAR and the mechanical work that you've done and making the liquor, there's a lot of ingenuity that goes into it. Finding the right method, finding the right recipe, finding the right setup on a race car, figuring out what works and what doesn't. How did you come about that kind of, I guess, curiosity?
Well, I've always wanted to go fast. I like speed, and you can't run the same thing somebody else is running. If you do, you're going to run with them. You've got to build your own. We don't, for him, we don't buy no parts. We make all of our suspension parts. You know, we have our engines built to our specs most of the time, and just got to be different to be fast. If everybody run the same thing, you're going to run the same speed.
What was it like trying to stay ahead, one step ahead of not only the competition, but the law?
Well, you just got to be careful. You don't never do the same thing twice. If you start getting in a pattern, you're going to get caught, you're going to get behind. We work on the car about every day. And like in Moonshine, you changed your route. You didn't run the same route all the time. And you didn't ever leave a steel at the same place very long. If you did, your neighbors is the one that's going to rat you out. In racing, moonshine, anything else. Most time it could be your best friend.
Really?
And they get a little jealous over something, you're going to get caught. The juniors always said, prepare that car to win that race. Just be careful and don't over-prepare it. He said, if you do, you'll get caught. So.
All right, so North Wilkesboro Speedway. How difficult was it for this community? I mean, you're within, what, 2 or 3 miles?
Like about a mile away the crow flies, but it's 2 miles.
Yeah. What did it do to this community when North Wilkesboro went away?
Well, I saw everything start depreciating. And at the time it went away, I was living in West Virginia.
What did it mean to you when it came back?
Well, it means a lot because the economy is going to pick up, and it opened up quite a few jobs. I could have went over and went to work, but I didn't want to.
All right. So here, I think it was last week, there was a sinkhole that appeared over there. And the rumor, and it's probably just good talk or what.
It is a rumor.
Yeah. There was a rumor that it opened up and revealed some sort of room that was used for illicit trade.
There was a drain pipe that it was leaking, and they've always had problem in that area with water drainage, and they just have installed a new pipe under the track to try to clear that, and that was part of that problem. that they just never did get up there to. But I don't believe it was ever a steel or anything around North Wilkesboro Speedway.
I'm going to ask this as tactfully as I know how. But if it had been something along those lines, I'm assuming you would have known about it.
Probably so. See, I was born in 46. That's the year the racetrack was built. So
yeah,
I would have been a very young man at that time. But I don't think it was ever a steal. Now, I have saw Moonshine at the racetrack stacked in the gas house, and it was just to give to the drivers and the whatnot.
Yeah, that evidently was an annual thing. I used to work for one of the NASCAR newspapers, and my boss said that every summer or every spring race, there would be, when everybody was finished with their work, Enoch would hand them a mason jar on the way out the door.
That's probably true.
Right.
I actually never saw him do it, but but all of it went somewhere.
There's evidently some sort of debate tonight in Martinsville about whether Henry County or Wilkes County is the moonshine capital of the world. Where would you fall on that?
It's Franklin County is the one that's supposed to have made the most moonshine up there, but I wouldn't argue the point either way, but Wilkes County has been moonshine here ever since, like I said, I was just a pup, 5, 6 years old. And Charlie Phelps in 1956, he rated 13 steals in 1 week here in Wilkes County. And he made a quote at that time. He said, "This has got to be the moonshine capital of the world." So that's where the first time it was ever quoted. And he was a federal officer. So.
Well, thank you for that advertising.
And then, Dawsonville, Georgia, they have claimed to be, Franklin County has claimed to be, but the first come from Charlie Phelps in 1956. So, and Charlie's dead now. His daughter has came by the steel a couple of times, and I've talked to her and whatnot. But she's a nice person too.
Good deal. Anything else you'd like to get across?
Yeah. Not really.
All right.
I'm not very good with stories. I just answer the questions.
Oh, this has been great.
Yeah. You have to jog my memory on a lot of things.
Oh, this has been great. All right, man. That is Buck Nance. Check back soon for another great episode.